Today on the Locked On Blues podcast, Pavel Buchnevich's injury. What does it mean? Was the hit clean or dirty? And are we concerned that it could affect his performance the rest of the season? And then after that, all things trade deadline. We got a couple different defensemen that are in the rumor mill. We're going to be talking about each and every one of them, giving our pros and cons and how likely we think they are to end up in a Blues uniform in the next 6 days. Make sure you stay tuned.
You're Locked On Blues, your daily podcast on the St. Louis Blues. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Locked On Blues podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and your number one source for daily Blues content. I'm Josh Hyman, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Thomas Welch. And we got an exciting episode for you today. First things first, we're going to be talking about the Pavel Buchnevich injury, as he did practice today in a non-contact uniform and with a tinted visor. So any speculation is pretty much out the window. He has/had a concussion. Concerning, we'll talk about the hit and all that stuff. Going to try to keep it brief because we got a lot of trade deadline rumors to get into. So it's going to be a fun episode, lots to get into. But first, wanted to thank Rock Auto. Today's episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com and tell them Locked On sent you. And thank you for making Locked On Blues part of your daily routine and making us your first listen. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast. All right, Tommy. So in the what team is Austin Watson even on? He's so irrelevant. In the Preds game. There you go. In the Nashville Predators game, Austin Watson delivered a hit up high to the head of Pavel Buchnevich, knocking him out of the rest of the game, knocking him out of practice for a few days. Finally returns today in practice wearing a non-contact jersey, wearing a tinted visor, meaning he, like I said, either still has or had a concussion, and probably is.
Preds. I lied. He's on the Senators.
Oh, I said Senators.
He used to be on the Preds.
I was gonna say, yeah. But anyways, yeah, in the Senators game, apologies for that hiccup. Like I said, dirty hit, maybe up high. We're gonna be talking about that in the first segment. Now, for those of you watching on YouTube, and Tommy as well, I'm gonna throw up a little picture on screen. I know that a still image of the hit, maybe a little bit of out of context, you don't get the full hit, but I'm going to throw the image up anyways. This is the moment of contact. Now, the rule, and I'm not going to sit here and complain that he should have been given supplemental discipline, but the rule for a hit to the head is the primary point of contact, Tommy. Now, I don't know if you're seeing the same image that I'm seeing, and those of you on YouTube looking at it, but
he's got a nose full of shoulder pads right
now.
Yeah,
I'm seeing the head going this way, the body in one place, and the shoulder of Austin Watson kind of being the thing that's making contact there. To not to beat around the bush, looks to me like the head is the primary point of contact. Now skates are on the ice, so didn't leave his feet necessarily, but still looking at that image, I think it's pretty clear that it was a dirty hit. Now, I don't want to sit here and complain that Austin Watson should be suspended, whatever. I did enough of that on Twitter. And you can't change time. Unfortunately, I don't think the Department of Player Safety is listening to this episode. But still, it left Pavel Buchnevich with an injury. I know you mentioned before the podcast, he is 2 points away from his career high in points and 2 goals away from his career high in goals. So to have his season sort of derailed at a time like this, really concerning, I think. He was just absolutely on fire. Probably the heart and soul of the Blues offense. The primary cog in that machine. You can use all the analogies you want. He was the most consistent player the Blues had on offense, in my opinion. You knew what you were getting out of him every single night. And now, all of a sudden, even when he does come back, he'll be recovering from a concussion, and we know that that's not easy. So what does that injury mean for not just the St. Louis Blues, but Pavel Buchnevich and the season that he's been having?
Yeah, I mean, that's the worst part of it, right? Is we've seen firsthand with the St. Louis Blues how much concussions can just completely derail a player's season. And for Pavel Buchnevich having a career year like we're talking about, and being such a forceful impact on this Blues team. If he comes back before the playoffs, if he's still trying to get healthy by the time the playoffs roll around, this team is going to be much different with Pavel Buchnevich, who's not playing at 100%. So I think that's the main concern here for the St. Louis Blues, is getting Buchnevich rested and healthy and back to 100% as soon as possible. Obviously, him practicing with a non-contact jersey is not an ideal scenario, but thankfully they have the depth and they were built with depth in mind to say, hey, like, some other guy has to step up in their spot. But the problem at practice today apparently was a lot of guys weren't there or left early. Bozak left early. Robert Thomas is still sick. And then you throw Buchnevich into that mix, and it feels like this team's dealing with a lot right now. And then you throw the trade deadline into the mix. It's like just pure chaos for the entire team, and like everyone's head is spinning in circles. So, yeah, I don't know. I just wish nothing but the best for Booch. Obviously, hope he gets back as soon as possible. But the Blues got some big games against the Penguins and the Blue Jackets coming up, so they're gonna kind of have to set that aside. Obviously, you always worry about your teammate, but you gotta go out there and take care of business, and hopefully they can do that.
Yeah, I mean, fortunately, we're currently in the lightest stretch that the Blues have for the remainder of the season in terms of frequency of games. If he is out for, like, let's say a week or so, he's only missing 2 additional games. But at the beginning of April, they have, I believe, like 6 games in 9 days or 6 games in 10 days, something ridiculous like that. So, you never want a guy to get injured, but the silver lining is, especially with a concussion, where you can't really it's not like, oh yeah, I can walk on it, I can play now. You kind of got to just go with your gut feeling almost. Like, yeah, there's spotters and stuff, but at the same time, concussion symptoms can come and go on a daily basis. One day he could be feeling 100%, and the next day he could wake up with symptoms returning. So the fact that they have kind of this break right now is encouraging. You don't want a guy like Buchnevich to rush back from something like that, especially because, once you get one concussion, I believe this is his first concussion in the NHL. I'm not 100% sure. I messaged Andrew Chelmy the day that it happened, and he didn't mention any previous concussions that he had remembered. So I believe this is his first time getting a concussion, at least at the NHL level.
2018.
Okay.
With the Rangers.
Okay, so second concussion.
Yeah, it looks like second.
Okay, a little scarier in that case. But yeah, once you get 1, once you get 2, they come easier. So you don't want him to rush back in a case like this. So the fact that the Blues do have a bit of a break is nice. You're not going to, because Pavel Buchnevich is a guy that I'm sure will be the first to say that he wants to get back out there. So hopefully, he gets the recovery that he needs, and he comes back with a little bit of anger in his belly, a little bit of fire in his belly after a dirty hit like that. So
that is what's scary, though, is like we watched David Perron the whole first half of this season struggle to get his footing because he has concussion history, and because, like you said, the lingering effects are hard to shake, and he never really found that rhythm. And now, second half of the season, obviously, it's great that he's playing point per game and putting shots in the net with consistency, but it took a long time to get there. And that's exactly what you don't want to happen with Pavel Buchnevich, because this team absolutely needs him down the stretch and through the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. You hit the nail on the head there. Now, speaking of guys the Blues might need throughout the playoffs, a couple of them might not be on the Blues right now. That might change in the coming days. We got a couple trade deadline candidates to talk about.
So much happened today. Oh my God.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's going to be second and third segment are going to be a bit of a cluster. You know what? We're going to be bouncing thoughts all over the place, but should be fun. We got a couple player cards with some advanced stats that we're going to throw up on screen, experimenting a little bit more with the YouTube thing. Going to be using some fun little visuals. So if you're not watching this one on YouTube, you're missing out a little bit. Make sure you check us out there. But that being said, got to take a quick second to shout out our sponsor for today, and that is BetOnline. Now, it's that time of year again, as college basketball's tournament is finally upon us. Hockey trade deadline, playoffs right around the corner, and baseball is back. What better time to start placing some bets? From all the latest odds, contests, and player props, BetOnline.net is the #1 source for all your sports betting needs and info. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games. So head to the website today or use that mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts, and we'll be right back. All right, Tommy. So before we get into some of the Blues targets, I do want to briefly touch on the elephant in the trade deadline room, and that is the fact that there's really only one team out there that is adding at the moment, and it's the one team that you can argue needs to add the least, the one team that is already the most stacked besides the Tampa Bay Lightning, and that is the Colorado Avalanche. They've already made two pretty decently sized moves, adding Josh Manson and now Nico Sturm. Nico
Yep.
Sturm. Yeah, I almost said Marco Sturm. That's a throwback Bruins player. Two small additions in hindsight, but any team like the Colorado Avalanche bringing in fresh blood is like, oh, great, another guy we got to deal with. So my question to you is, if you're Doug Armstrong and you see, the team to beat in your, not only your division, but your conference, the team that you're going to have to go through if you want to make it to the Stanley Cup final this year, you see them adding this early, sort of setting the tone for the trade deadline. Are you getting a little nervous, shifted in your seat a little bit, being like, oh crap, we got to do something? Or you staying on course? You're not letting the Colorado Avalanche, freak you out. You're saying my plans haven't changed. The Avalanche can do what they want. We're going to, stick to our original plans. This doesn't change anything.
I think you stay the course, and I think you take note of what the Avalanche is doing, but I don't think the Avalanche are really throwing any surprises at Doug Armstrong. And even, I'm in the court, and I'm sure Doug Armstrong is in the court of just assuming that Claude Giroux is going to be a member of the Colorado Avalanche, just because of
they did ship out a center,
and they have a ton of cap space with Landeskog being on long-term injured reserve too. So if they get him back and Claude Giroux is on the team come playoff time, it's going to be a nightmare. But the Blues, I think, are building up in spite of that to prepare for that. Obviously, as we've talked about all season long, defenseman is in need. Blues have been linked to Ben Sherratt, Ivan Provorov, Jacob Chikrin, basically Mark Giordano, every single defenseman you can think of, Carson Soucy, Lindholm. Like, we're going to talk about them all today, or as much as we can get to. But I also think it's interesting that tonight's game, the Toronto Maple Leafs against the Dallas Stars, had a Blues scout in attendance. Now, if you've been following the Stars at all, you know that Miro Heiskanen is out with mono. Klingberg obviously has kind of told the front office that he wants a trade. It's highly unlikely that they'd be willing to trade him to a Central Division rival in the St. Louis Blues, especially for the playoffs when they could run into us. So that leads me to believe that the Blues are there for the Maple Leafs, and the Maple Leafs have notably been interested in Ville Husso. So that's not to say that Ville Husso is going to be moved by the deadline, but I don't think Doug Armstrong is not open to the idea of it, or is not open to, like, he's not off limits, right?
So Matthews, baby.
Yeah, one for one. No, but that brings a whole nother curveball into play here, because we were all thinking about defensemen, but what you could potentially get for Ville Husso is just maximum return, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of chips at play here. Yeah, Nylander as well, and I don't know. It's definitely going to be interesting. There's a couple guys that I got my eye on, and I know there's a bunch of like smaller, not like Elliot Friedman, not like Andy Strickland, but like smaller insider with like 7 R's that have already said that Ben Sherratt to the St. Louis Blues is a done deal, and they're just waiting on specifics. I don't know if that's particularly true, because Pierre LeBrun came out and said today that the Blues aren't interested in giving up a first-round pick, much like we said here on the podcast. That just doesn't seem like Doug Armstrong would be interested in that. They are interested in Sherratt, but they want to make something work where they're not giving up a first-round pick. So I've heard Jake Neighbors' name mentioned in that. No, I absolutely think that is 100% false. It would never happen. If you're not going to give up a first-round pick for Sherratt, you're not giving up Jake Neighbors. So just to put your minds at rest on those two fronts, I don't believe, I'm like 95% that neither of those would happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot going on right now. I feel like I'm constantly refreshing my Twitter page and expecting to see a tweet from Elliot Friedman with just an absolute bomb that is just going to make us all freak. So everybody's kind of on pins and needles right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll tell you what, Tommy, we're going to head to the second ad break a little bit early here, because in this third segment, it's going to be all about kind of diving into some more of the advanced stats of these guys. I mentioned it earlier. If you're watching on YouTube right now, you're going to have a bit of a visual. We'll be throwing up some player cards from our good friend over at Jay Fresh. He makes these amazingly detailed advanced stats player cards. So if you're on YouTube, I'm going to try to walk you through what some of these numbers mean. And then if you're listening, in your car, whatever, at home, going to try to do our best to make sure you guys can follow along too. So trying out something a little new. Hope you guys like it. It should be fun. But that being said, before we get into that, I want to tell you guys about our good friends over at Rock Auto. Now, with the ever-increasing number of makes and models, it's now nearly impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing the only brand their warehouse happens to carry? You have computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. You can save time and money when using Rock Auto. Plus, Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years, and all prices are reliably low for every customer, whether you're a car professional or just a do-it-yourselfer looking to fix it up. They have everything you need: brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, even new carpet. So go explore their easy-to-use website today to find the solution to your auto parts needs. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck, right locked on in their How Did You Hear About Us box, so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com, and we'll be right back. All right, Tommy, it's time to dive into some advanced stats. And let's just start it out right off the bat with the guy that everybody's been talking about, the name that has been most closely linked with the St. Louis Blues, and that is Ben Sherratt. Now, I'm going to throw this card up on the screen, going to try to explain it as quickly as I can and in a way that people that are not watching on YouTube can see. So, first stat that jumps out right at the top of the screen is WAR, wins above replacement. All these are in percentile. So, if you have a 100th percentile WAR, you are better than every other player in the league technically at your position than what you do. Ben Sherratt has a 35% WAR, meaning he is better than 34 out of 100 defensemen at his position. Red is bad, blue is good. The darker red it is, the worse he is. The darker blue it is, the better he is. So looking at Ben Sherratt right off the bat, not the best wins above replacement. Pretty good at even strength. Not the best when it comes to special teams. Takes a heck of a lot of penalties, but he's a decent finisher. Right off the bat, let's talk about Ben Sherratt for a little bit. What did you like? What do you see on that card that's good? What do you see on it that's bad? How could Ben Sherratt help the St. Louis Blues based off of just those advanced stats?
Well, I think out of the defensemen that are available, he's kind of one of the guys that are more like of double-sided, right? He's gonna what he brings to you offensively is similar to what he brings to you defensively. He's not so much one-sided as a guy like Provorov or a guy like Chicharron, but he's gonna balance it out, and I feel like that could potentially be useful for this Blues team. But I think the main thing that you're looking at with Ben Sherratt, and that isn't really mirrored by the numbers on that card, is his physicality. He is a big dude. And if you're looking for a guy that's going to clear the crease, Ben Sherratt can absolutely do that for you. And he's 30 years old, and he's kind of near the end of a contract. But I think if Doug Armstrong is going to trade for him and give up any kind of substantial return for him, it's not going to be for a rental. He's going to kind of lock him up to an extension.
Right.
Go from there. So, because I mean, the last time Doug did a rental was like Ryan Miller, right? And that didn't work out.
We all know how that went.
Yeah, so I think that scalded him going forward. I just don't see him doing that. So I feel like he's gonna, any defenseman or any acquisition that he brings in, I feel like he's gonna try to lock up long term or have some kind of mindset in place to where you give them a return and then like a sign and extend kind of deal.
Yeah,
trade and extend. Jesus.
Yeah, so we talked about Ben Sherratt, a guy that initially we were kind of down on, maybe still not too thrilled. A guy that we talked pretty positively about is Ivan Provorov. Now, throwing up his card, Tommy, I used this joke before the podcast. I'm going to use it again, and I'm sorry. Throwing up Ivan Provorov's card, it looks like a Playboi Carti album because, oh boy, there is a whole lot of red. But yeah, it really surprises me there if you're watching on YouTube. A lot of red for Ivan Provorov. He is below average in every category besides even strength, offense, finishing, and goals per 60. Having had a really down year in 2020, 2021, has just been kind of on the trend downward ever since. He is locked up long term. He is only 24, but seems to be a guy that is a little bit more offensive heavy than defensive heavy. Is Ivan Provorov the guy after seeing that, or are you a little less interested knowing that you're only really getting offense out of him in his current state?
Throw it up again real fast.
Throw it up again.
If you look at his stonks here and his WAR percentile, right? 18 and 19 and 19 to 20. He's just on a steady incline, right? Trending all the way up. So you talk about a down year. This is absolutely a down year, but I think it's been a down year for the entire Flyers team. And I think these numbers kind of mirror that. And it's difficult to be in the right state of mind to be fully productive for a team when your team is struggling as much as the Flyers have this year. So as bad as those numbers look, and as a whole lot of red as I'm staring at right there, Josh, I do feel like Provorov has youth on his side and has time on his side, to where if you are Doug Armstrong and you do trade for him and extend him to a longer deal, you can kind of see the fruits as they come, right? And you can take that time to watch him develop and see where he goes. And maybe this year is an outlier and he just continues on that steady incline like we saw on the Stonks, but maybe it's not. But that's kind of the dice you got to roll when you're one of these teams at the deadline that could kind of swing either way.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, another guy on the other end of the spectrum, at least when it comes to advanced stats, a guy that we've been talking about and basically trying to will into a Blues uniform, is Jakob Chicharron. Now, looking at Jakob Chicharron's card,
That might be why.
looking a lot like a Mac Miller song, because oh baby, it's a blue world. I'm firing those off.
Josh, where's the plus minus on here? I don't see it.
Yeah, so Jakob Chicharron literally does not have a bad stat on his page. 88th percentile WAR, 99th percentile goals per 60, 90th percentile penalties, 91st percentile PK, 81st even strength offense. See, I could just go on and on. If you're on YouTube, you're seeing it. You're seeing how much better this card thinks Jakob Chicharron is than any other defenseman that we have shown to this point. And that's interesting because I feel like we've both been talking about Chicharron having somewhat of a down year, at least statistically. Well, the numbers would indicate that he is continuing his upward trend, and just every end of the ice, every aspect of the game, he is better than 9 out of the 10 of his peers at the young age of 23. Oh, that would be exciting to add in a Blues uniform, wouldn't it?
It would, man. And I think that's why I get so excited about him, because it feels like I was in a group chat with a couple buddies from Twitter earlier today, and we were talking about the Blues, and a number one defenseman. And as much as we talk about Justin Falk being the number one defenseman on this team, as far as NHL standards go, I really don't feel like this team has a number one defenseman. And I'm not saying Jakob Chicharron is that guy, but there's potential for him to be that guy, right? And I feel like anytime you bring in a guy like that has time on his side and has the numbers and the analytics to back it up, it's exciting for everybody involved, right? And I do stand by the fact, I brought it up a couple episodes ago, but I do think bringing in a guy his size that can bring it offensively and bring it defensively takes a massive burden off the shoulders of Colton Parayko. And that if you can get Colton Parayko back to playing the style of hockey and the level of hockey that we saw in 2019, you absolutely have to do everything in your power to make that happen. Even if it's offering Jake Neighbors, that would be the worst case scenario in terms of a blue chip trade bait for somebody. But honestly, I feel like Jakob Chicharron could be a guy that is potentially worth it, especially at the contract that he's at, and getting Colton Parayko back to his fantastic form in the meantime. So I don't know. It's definitely going to be a very interesting trade deadline, but I know I keep talking about it on this podcast, but that's my number one want for this deadline, is make a trade for Jakob Chicharron happen.
Oh man, I would be over the moon. And it really is one of those things where you kind of got to bite the bullet. If you're going to get a guy like Jakob Chicharron, you got to bite the bullet and accept whatever's going out, the other way. And a guy like Jake Neighbors, as hard as that would be to part with someone like him, that's what you got to do if you're making a big splash, making a trade for someone as impactful as Jakob Chicharron. Now,
and here's the thing with Chicharron too. It's normally when you're trading for a guy at the deadline, it's like a rental or a short-term kind of fix to a problem that you have during the season. With Chicharron, you've got him for 4 years on a team-friendly deal. He's only 24 years old, and typically that would kind of overlap from a team that's contending into let's say our window is closing or whatever, and then you try to rebuild a team, because the Blues window will potentially be closed in 2023. You have to make
only 23 years old, Tommy. You overestimated.
Well, so even better. So
Mm-hmm.
if their window closes in 2023, and you've got O'Reilly that you have to pay, Vladimir Tarasenko that you have to pay, Barbashev, all these guys, you don't really know what the team's going to look like. If you can extend Jacob Chikrin into that, or even past that point of 2023, to give you a little bit more comfortability on the back end, that is huge. And then if you can extend him past that and be a key part of this team moving forward with Jordan Kyrou, with Robert Thomas, with Colton Parayko, with Torrey Krug, with all these guys, I think this team wouldn't even have to rebuild or even have a retool. Like, you just go from being a playoff contender with one team to completely transitioning into a whole nother playoff contending team. Like, that's just, I feel like that's the best case scenario for any GM, and Doug Armstrong has an opportunity to pull that off with a trade for Jacob
Yeah,
Chikrin.
I mean, I think at the moment, the Blues kind of have the guys that they're going to hand the reins to in terms of the forward core. Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou are going to be, when this window, quote unquote, is closed, doesn't mean they're not going to contend for a Stanley Cup. That just means guys like Ryan O'Reilly, David Perron aren't going to be the ones leading the charge. And on offense, I would argue that they're pretty much set. Obviously they need to fill in some pieces here and there, but if I'm a Blues fan, if I'm Doug Armstrong, I'm very comfortable handing the reins off to Jordan Kyrou, Robert Thomas, Jake Neighbors, Klim Kostin, even maybe Ivan Barbashev as well. On defense, a little bit more of a question mark. The defense, the average age of the Blues defense is a little bit higher. You don't really have that guy that you're like, all right, yeah, once he develops, he will be the guy on this defense. Whatever. Parayko maybe getting up there in age, he'll be on the tail end of his prime when that happens. They don't really have that guy that they're ready to make, the face of their defense come the shift in the changing of the guard, I should say. So who better than Jacob Chikrin? Obviously easier said than done, especially with his injury. I would expect if he does get traded, or I would not even if he does get traded, but if he does get traded to the Blues, I would expect it to come in the offseason rather than the trade deadline, as much as it pains me to say that. I don't think it's completely out of the realm of possibility, but I just know Doug Armstrong is very careful when it comes to acquiring guys at the deadline, and a guy who's, going to be injured for the first 3 weeks after you trade for him is maybe not what they're looking for. Maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I hope 6 days from now, you can look at me and laugh at me and call me an idiot because Jacob Chikrin is the newest member of the St. Louis Blues. But, maybe something that we're going to be continuing to talk about into the offseason, maybe a potential Vladimir Tarasenko for Jacob Chikrin 1-for-1 swap. All jokes. That's a hot take, but who knows? Could be an offseason storyline for sure, or we could continue to talk about that over the next few days. That being said, the only way you'll know whether or not we talk about it over the next few days is hitting that follow or subscribe button on whatever podcast platform.
Josh, before we go, I want to offer a little bit of tidbit information to our loyal listeners because I appreciate you guys. And yeah, I do genuinely appreciate you guys. And I know that trade deadline can be hectic for everybody involved. And I know even for me, like, having people slide my DMs and like mention stuff to me that I'm just like, it's just not even worth mentioning because half the time it's wrong. But this one I trust 100% because it was right last time about Zach Sanford. And so I assume that it'll be right this time. I heard through the grapevine and Blues sources and all this stuff that the Blues are confident that they will be able to move Marco Scandella at the trade deadline. So I'm not going to tweet that out or anything, but if you listen to the podcast, you'll know that. And if it happens, you'll know who had it first. And if it doesn't happen, then I'll look like an idiot. But stuff like this changes all the time. I'm just telling you guys what I know. So be on the lookout for that. It'll be a lot of fun.
You heard it here first. Or if it doesn't happen, you
never heard it.
You didn't hear it. You did not hear it here first. This was just a dream. This episode wasn't real. That being said, Tom, you're giving people crap calling insider with 7 R's. I think you got to add a few R's here. The T Welch shirt.
They were right last time, and they've been right about a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I just
I
speak on it, so I trust it.
I would be in the same boat as that. Gonna try to dance around it, but credibility with that source, most definitely. If it doesn't happen, it's not because we were pulling this one out of our rear end. There's some legitimate clarity to that one.
I wouldn't
but anyways,
bring it up if I didn't trust it.
That being said, though, it is all the time we have for you guys today. So make sure you hit that follow or subscribe button, whatever podcast platform you listen to us on. Plus, make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube. Tried out something a little different today. Try to show up some fun visuals, the picture of the hit, a couple of advanced stats, player cards. Hopefully, it was all good for you guys that were listening, not on YouTube. But for those of you who are on YouTube, we're trying to take it to that next level, go above and beyond, make our content a little bit more engaging, interactive. Give you guys some pretty colors to look at. Well, give you a break from our ugly mugs. So yeah, let us know in the comments what you thought of that. Had a lot of fun doing it. We're having a lot of fun doing this YouTube thing in general. So yeah, make sure you subscribe to us there at Locked On Blues on YouTube. We're close to 200 subscribers. Oh my goodness. Very exciting there. Hit that notification bell. That way, whenever we upload a new episode, you'll be the first to know. Follow us on all of our socials. Locked On Blues on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. Follow me on Twitter at Josh Hyman NHL. Follow Tommy at TWelcher15. Thanks so much for listening. And as always, let's go Blues.